My mom often told me that I was a all or nothing kind of gal. I'd either go fully into something and do everything I could, or I wouldn't do anything at all. And recently I have learned that that is actually the result of negative perfectionism, which is defined by the inability to adapt to certain situations or your environment. To overcome this rigid mindset and to transition into a more flexible and adaptive mindset, I basically just had to accept three things: failure, success, and reality. The perfectionist in me wants a clear and straight line towards my goal. I don't want there to be any obstacles. I don't want to overcome things. I don't want to deviate from my path, and I want to be there as quick as possible. But in the end, that meant that what I was doing was driven by fear. Fear of deviating from the path and fear of not being able to overcome any obstacles. And I could be extremely harsh on myself, feeling like I could better stop if I made a mistake because I was never gonna be good at it anyways. There was no room for failure and there was no room for mistakes. And if I did make a mistake, if something didn't work out, I'd be like, okay, I can't do this. And I drop it, never look back, and go to the next thing. All or nothing. My inability to accept failure as a part of the journey towards a goal meant that sometimes I was stuck researching every aspect of something that I wanted to be good at. And a great example for me would be photography. I wanted to get into photography. I wanted to make really cool pictures because, I don't know, it was something that I wanted to learn. But instead of going out there and making and taking those pictures, I bought, I think, 3 books, and I would watch all the YouTube videos out there on how to make photos, how to do composition, which gear to use, how you can pose a model for portrait shoots, and then also how to do wildlife photos and landscape photos. And I would be watching and reading and taking in all this information for I think 3 or 4 months. And during all that time, I never took one picture. I bought my camera, which is what I'm filming on right now, but I never took a picture. And then when the time came to take pictures, I was like, okay, well, I know all of this information. I took my pictures and I don't know, they weren't great. They weren't great because honestly, you cannot expect to be great at something before you've even practiced it. But I did. I expected myself to be a great photographer the first time that I went out and took pictures. And not getting those results, not taking those amazing pictures that I could see in my mind, just couldn't get on my camera or on my computer after I've edited them, I thought I'd better quit because I did all this research, but it wasn't working out. And I'm really curious, am I alone in this? Like, can you recognize yourself in studying and researching something for months, taking all that information in without actually putting it into practice? And when it all comes down to it, my inability to accept failure meant that I gave up on a lot of things that I wanted to learn. So I really had to learn to accept failure as part of the process. Failure is sometimes necessary to progress and learn and get better at something. And I love this little quote from Thomas Edison, who, according to himself, failed his way to success. I have not failed. I have simply found 10,000 ways that do not work. And I think that is the gist of having to accept failure as part of your process. And in learning to accept failure, I also had to learn to accept success. And I know that this may sound really counterintuitive because as a perfectionist, success is all you want, but hear me out. When I started learning about photography, I wanted to make the best photos out there. And by having that as my goal, I was rejecting success. The perfectionist in me was rejecting success by setting unrealistic high goals. And I made a video about setting personal goals in which I said you have to set challenging goals in order to increase your effort and your performance in them. But you do have to set realistic goals and know your limits. Accept the fact that you have limits, otherwise you will never be successful. So in order to accept success, I have to accept that I have limits and I have to set goals that are challenging but attainable. It simply comes down to having realistic standards for success. And once I am successful, I had to learn to appreciate my success. And I remember this time when I got a 9.5 for an exam in uni in my first year, and it's the highest grade I've ever gotten. And I remember being disappointed. Because I was like, well, if I had just gotten that one answer right, it would have been a 10. I know, like looking back at it, I cannot believe that I thought in that way. That I got a 9.5, which is like crazy good. And I'd be disappointed that I got one answer wrong and therefore it wasn't a 10. To accept success, I had to accept the fact that I have limits. And I had to appreciate my success once I've got it. And I have a question for you. How many legs does a dog have if you call its tail a leg? 4. Calling the tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. A leg is a leg, a tail is a tail. I had to apply this concept to myself and my situation. I have to accept reality and I have to accept myself as who I am. I am all I will always have. If I don't accept myself, if I don't accept my feelings and my actions, I will always feel like a failure. And that also means that I have to accept the fact that I sometimes do feel disappointed and I sometimes do feel sad. Like I said in my last video where I told you guys that I got rejected to a master's program that I applied for, I felt really disappointed. But I let myself feel that way. I accepted the reality that I was disappointed. I had to learn to accept reality to overcome that rigid perfectionist in me. Reality either being failure or success or an emotion. Please let me know your thoughts on how I overcame my rigid perfectionism. Do you think this is something that might work for you too? And either why yes or why no? Please let me know in the comments down below. Because I'm really curious to see if you think that accepting your failures, accepting success, and just simply accepting reality and you as you might help you too in overcoming that rigid perfectionism. For now, I hope to see you in my next one.